Hello and welcome. We have a lot more work to do, so let's get started. I'm going to bring up my terminal and populate both node modules with yarn, cd into front end, and then we will yarn there as well. Right now we have app.use here, and it's doing this whole try-catch block. And this is just one thing, just the sign up, and it's taking up quite a bit of room. If we wrote everything in our server would be thousands of lines long, and we do not want that. So we're going to do this differently. We're going to separate our routes and our actual logic. So we'll have an app.use that defines a route, and we're just going to define it to auth, like so. And instead of this whole async request, it's just going to go to what we're going to name auth routes in a moment. We could get rid of all of this for now, or even just copy it and bring it into your next file. But I'm going to get rid of it for now, and we need to define what auth routes are. So here, let's make a new folder, and we will call it routes. Inside of there, let's make a file called auth routes.js. Now, auth routes will be a router. So const express, we're going to just bring in express here. So require express. Great. And we're going to make a router. So const router will equal express dot capital R router. And now we will route our incoming request. So actually it's router dot route. And then we just go ahead, and the first one was /signup. We know it's a post route, so dot post. And then inside of post, we're going to hand it the function. So we could have pasted the entire function in here, but that still will get very messy. So inside of post, what we're just going to say is auth controller, which we haven't made yet. That's going to be where we keep all of our logic, dot sign up. So in order to post this, it's going to use our logic from our auth controller dot sign up. Now after this, just go ahead and module.exports. And what it will export is router. Now let's make that file so it won't be within routes, it'll be outside of everything. We have another folder. It'll be called controllers. Now inside of controllers, we will have our auth controller.js. Let's bring in our user schema. So const user will equal require, and we'll find our user schema. Just up one dot slash to schemas user. Now we'll have a lot of exports here. So we're just going to exports dot sign up, because that's the first one that we need. It'll be an async. Actually, it'll just be everything that we had there. Async request response and everything that's here. We do need to end this, so we'll get rid of you and we're good. Now let's trace it backward, because now we have to go to our auth routes and include that. So const auth controller equals require, then up one into controllers auth controller. Now when we post and we use auth controller.signup, we're talking about the logic that's inside of auth controller.signup. So let's trace that the whole way here. We'll start from the server itself. The server will get a hit on auth. It won't know that it's sign up, but it knows that it's at least API v1 auth, and it'll pass it to our auth routes, which we're bringing in right up here, or we're not yet. Let's do that. Const auth routes equals require dot slash routes slash auth routes. Okay, let me talk through that one more time. So we get a request, it hits API v1 auth, it gets sent to the auth routes, which we brought in up here. We could go to our auth routes. Now, if it says sign up and it's a post request, we're going to use the logic from the auth controller.signup. which is in our controller here. So we're exporting this logic, this sign up logic that we wrote before. And now in our server, we just have one line of code instead of all of this. So we have a nice server file that's not weighed down by all the code that we need for the logic of that one route, because we're going to have lots and lots of routes. Let's make sure this is still working by yarn run dev, and we'll try to make a user. So I'll head over to log in. I'll call it user2 at user.com. And the login signup doesn't matter yet. These are all going to sign up. Remember that. We did that last video. And I'll just give a password and bring up the inspector, well, the console. Let's take a look at what happens. The user was created. So it did work again, and we should be able to see it here if we just refresh. Here we are, user2 at user.com, and yes, I did make the password. But looking at the password in the database like this, we do not want this sort of responsibility. We don't want to hold passwords like this and hope no one breaks into the database ever. We're going to need to hash this password. We'll head back in here into our auth controller. That's where we will hash the password. So let's const bcrypt equals require bcrypt. And this is what we'll use to hash our password. Now we have the email and we have the password. I'll make a helper function outside of this that hashes passwords. So how about const encrypt pw for password, and async, because this is async, so you have to actually put that. It's taking in the password. And in the body, we will return await, because this takes some time, to bcrypt dot hash. Inside here, we pass it what we want it to hash, which is the password, and then a value. 10, 12, or 14 are normal. I think 12 is good enough right now. And it'll keep going up as computer processing power goes up. This will take a lot longer if you put this, say, to 20 or something. This is really the amount of salting that happens. So we have our encryption set up, and let's now do it before we create the new user. So we'll do it right here. So const pw for password is going to equal await encrypt password pw. That's the function we just made right over there, and we'll pass in the password. And now instead of just pushing the password into user.create, the password will be pw. Now let's see that in action by making another user. So this one will be called user3, and we'll have the same password. I'll submit that, and it was created. Let's take a look at the hashed password. There it is. Perfect. Now we're no longer storing the word password, we're storing a hash of the word password. So this means password. With that working, let's get started on our login function. So we have our sign up, and we see how that's working. We bcrypt everything, go from there. And you can actually see here, well, we have the request.body coming in, and then the user, which gets console logged here as well. There's the body, there's the user. I'm going to get rid of those for now. We don't need them. Next, we will do in exports.login. That will be an async request response, and point that arrow function to a try catch. I'll do a catch here with ERR for error, and we're good to go. Let's steal that first line like we did before. So the first line will be pulling the email and the password off of the request.body, because we'll get that when we're logging in as well. Now we're going to pull the user. So const user will await user, and here's another method, find one. Now in the find one method, we're going to pass it the email. So it's going to use the email to find the user, and we have to do something special here, .select, and we're going to have to get the password. And I know we just kind of took the password away, I think, last video, but this is really one of the only places that we want the password. So we're going to dot, not is selected, that was auto done, sorry about that, dot select, not is selected, don't let that auto fill. So we're going to select that we do want the password when we make this call. It says await twice too, this is a mess. Await. Okay, then there's one more of these. Wow, that was messy. This is what it should look like. I hope that that didn't bother you too much. Let's move on now to const compared. Now it's going to compare the password passed in with the password that we got from the select, and we need bcrypt for that one more time. So bcrypt.compare. And inside of there, we're going to pass both of those things in. Password, and then comma, we'll compare it to user.password. Now this will return true or false. So we'll use compared as a ternary. So we'll throw a question mark in there. And if it is true, we'll give back basically the same status, except it'll be a 200. Let me just put it in here first. We'll switch it to 200. And the user doesn't need user new user, it could just be user, because that's what we called it right here. And if it comes out false, what are we going to do? We want to send an error back. So we'll take the res status again, and instead of sending all of that, we're just going to send an error. So we'll do, instead of 200, 400. And then at the .json, we should have an error message. So message login failed. And in the catch, we're just going to console.log err. Now, in these catches, we're going to set up a full error handler. So right now, if you're like, we're really not handling the errors properly, you're correct. And we will fix this later. We're just getting the hang of working with MongoDB and Mongoose and Express and Node. There's a lot going on here. So let's just focus on that for right now. So this will now compare them, and if it comes out that these passwords match, we're going to get a res status of 200 and a JSON of that user. Now we're going to need to make a route for it. So in auth routes, we're going to have another router.route, and this is going to be ./login.post. Then auth controller.login. So that's set up there. I hate when I do these dots. I don't like them there at all. We'll get that dot out of there. Let's move over into our front end and change some code so we could sign up and we can log in. So we'll go to our components, into auth, into authenticate. And in authenticate, we have the API already in here, which is happening here. So we have the submit, and now we should just have two different URLs. So we'll just do a ternary where URL is, and what we have to base it on is the submit val. The submit val starts on login, but it can be changed to sign up. So what we'll say is submit val triple equal to login, and question mark that. It's capital L for the login. Make sure you do that. And this will be the or part of the statement, because when we're not on login, we're definitely on sign up. So we'll say auth, /auth, then /login. So when we're on login, the URL goes to the auth/login, and when we're on sign up, or when we're not on login, the URL is going to sign up. So that is already set up. Just save it and let's try to now log in. I know that it's not secure. Thank you, browser. Now we have login, we have sign up. So I'm going to go to login, and what was my user's name? User3 at user.com. So we're going to go in with user3 at user.com, and the password was password. Let's see if that works. It does. We have a status text of OK. The 200 came back instead of the 201. We have the data of user. we have in clearance, an email, and we have a password. So we did need this password to do that comparison, but we don't want the password ever getting back to the front end. So let's change that in our auth controller now. So we compared it, and after we compare it, we're going to lose it right away. So user.password equals null. So we'll get no password back when it comes back, and I will log in one more time and make sure we get no password. And here we are. Here's our data. User, we have clearance, our password is null. Okay, great, our login is up and working, but now we have to head into actually authenticating people. We need them to have a JSON web token so that we know that they are logged in at all times. So let's bring in our JSON web token. So const JWT equals require, and that's just because I don't want to write JSON web token every single time that we write this. So we're going to have our JWT coming in with that. Now we'll need to set some values for our JSON web token. Let's get started by just kind of bringing them in before we make them. We'll have JWT secret, and this is used to encode your JSON web token. We're going to put it in process.env.jwt secret, and that's the first one. Now we'll have another const. This will be called JWT expires. And that will equal process.env.jwt expires. And finally, we're going to make one more, JWT expiration as a number. And that will equal process.env.jwt expiration num. So let's make all of these. The first one is our secret, that's how we encode everything. The second one is when it should expire in, say, days or hours. Now the expiration number is when it should expire in milliseconds that we convert to, say, days or hours. Head into your .env right down here, and we're going to make each one of them. So I'll take the first one, that's JWT secret, and this should just be a long string, and you can make it real long. You can make it as long as you want. This is a long JWT string, and it probably should be longer than this too, to be honest with you, but for this, I'm going to keep that. Now, the next thing I want is JWT expires. So the JWT expires, I'm going to say you're in for 14 days. Now there's one more, the expiration number, and let's do the math for 14 days. We want 14 days. In a day, there are 24 hours. In an hour, there are 60 minutes. In a minute, there is 60 seconds. In a second, there is 1,000 milliseconds, and that equals 14 days. So with that all set up, we're ready to encrypt JSON web tokens and send them to our user. Back to the auth controller. Now below my encrypt password, I'm going to make a new one called const make JWT with a capital J. Make JWT is going to equal, and what goes inside here is the ID. And we'll see this in a moment. This is a helper function. It just needs to be written before we write the main function, and then we can kind of explain what's happening. JWT.sign. So this is them signing the token. We pass in the ID here, and after that we comma to the JWT secret. So that's what we're signing it with. And then we have some options, and all we're going to use is expires in. So in expires in, JWT expires. So that's the 14D, the 14 days one. Now let's use this to send a token. Const, let's say send token. Okay, so in order to send a token, we're going to have a user, a status code, a request, and a response. Wow, that's not status code. A status code. and a fat arrow function, const token equals make JWT. So that's the function right up here. And I'm getting a error. Oh, that's because there's no comma. Okay. So we have our make JWT, and all I want in here is the user's ID. So what we'll put here is user._ID. You could do user.id too. I'm pretty sure that works just the same. But in the database, if you were to take a look, you'd see that the IDs have an underscore before it says ID, so I do type that in there. And that will give us our token. After that, we want to set some options. And some of these we won't use for quite a while, but we will use expires right away. It's just expires, not expires in. It's new date. So we'll use a date.now for right now, date.now, and then plus the JWT underscore expiration number. So we add the milliseconds to the current date, and that's where the expiration is. Pretty simple way of doing that. Now, here are two different options that we will use in the final product, but we won't use now. Node underscore env. We didn't bring this in. Let me just bring this in on top. Const node underscore env equals process dot env dot node env. Now, if the node env is triple equal to production, right now we're in dev, so this will not be true. But if it's in production, what we want is true, otherwise we want false. And we have to do this one more time, and I'll write it in its shorthand. So HTTP only is the next one. Now we'll just say node underscore env triple equal to production again. And that's all we need to say, really. If node env isn't triple equal to production, the value will be false. If it is, the value will be true, so the ternary isn't necessary. And there we go. Now we're going to send this token as a cookie. So res.cookie. Now we've used res before for other things. This time we're going right into the cookies. JWT is going to be the name of the token that we're passing. Then we're passing the token, which we wrote right up here. Then we're passing the options in, which we put over here. So name of the token, the encoded token itself, all the options about the token, including when it expires, passed as a cookie. And now after we send that cookie over there, we're going to do our response right inside of here. So res.status, that will be the status code that we pass to it. And we could comma, well not comma, dot to JSON. And inside of JSON, we'll have our object that has a status of, let's say success. We'll have the token, and we'll have the user. So we're just going to pass the token here just so that we can see it. We might not want to pass the token this way at all, but we can pass it right now just to see it. So let's pass this information. We have user and status code with the send token. So inside of login, if the person has the proper password here, we're no longer going to do this. We don't need to do that. We need to send a token. Tell them that they are authenticated. So we'll send a token. It needs the user, the status code, which was 200, and we'll pass it request and response as well. So that all will head to our send token, user status code, request, response. Now, when people sign up, we want the same thing to happen. We want to pass them all their authentication as a cookie here in the sign up as well. So instead of where we have this res status, everything over there, we're going to grab what we just did, and we will change a couple things, but we'll paste it in. And remember, we called it new user, so we want to write new user here for our user, and 201 for created instead of OK. And we can save that up. And now we should be passing a cookie. We did a lot of code there, and it was pretty complicated with all these moving parts. So let's give it a shot and see if we do get a cookie. So we'll head into, we'll head into our app, and I'm going to log in as my user and see if my cookie comes. And something's wrong. It says Secret or private key must have a value at make JWT 15.9. And there must be something wrong here, and there is right away. I see that I actually closed the sign before we did all of the signing of the sign. So I will close it after, and that should be much better. That closes after the return. Let's try that one more time, see if that's the only error we had. It doesn't look like it. It looks like we had one more. Secret or private key. Maybe I'm not importing. I'm not. Okay. Let's require. And in here, we're going to require.env and then .config the function. Cool. Now, we should be working. Let's see. And we got past that. Now we have new date. That looks like a typo. It looks like I wrote new and date together. Where are you? 25. Yes. Yeah, I wrote new and date together. That's a typo. You probably caught that. And let's try again. There we go. Now we're authenticated. That was a lot of code, and you're definitely going to make some mistakes. I know I do. But when you get to the end and you have your status of success and your token coming through, and we can see that big encoded token, and we have our user with his clearance level and the passwords blocked out. Now let's go up here and we're going to take a look at our cookies. We should have a cookie for localhost, and inside there should be our JWT, and there is our beautiful, delicious cookie. We did a great job there. This was fantastic. I really like how far we got with this so far. There's so much more to do. So please come back to the next one. Great job today, and keep coding.